all about execution. It's all about the initial idea.
Half of my life is just, do I have the guts to place this order?
We ended up launching, and in 42 days, we raised $600,000.
I like to celebrate wins for a night or two, but they're done. And it's always about what's next.
I'm not optimistic that the government's going to solve anything. Entrepreneurs are going to be billionfold over anybody else solving the problems, because a great problem is a great business opportunity.
Hey Fastlaners, this is Ryan Daniel Moran. Welcome back to Freedom Fastlane. Today you're going to hear a clip from our December event called Freedom Fastlane Live. It was held here in Austin, Texas. And what we try to do at Freedom Fastlane Live is put the best capitalists, entrepreneurs, brand builders, and investors into one place, invite people to join, and watch what happens. We just try to create the biggest business up-leveling possible. This year's event featured Peter Diamandis, JP Sears, Cameron Harold, the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey, a panel of people who built $100 million businesses, our investor panel, and a bunch more. And in past events, we've had billionaire Jeff Hoffman, Pat Flynn, Robert Herjavec, Gary Vaynerchuk, and others. So today you're going to hear a clip from the recent event. We don't release the entire event for obvious reasons, but there are certain clips that we find particularly beneficial that we want to share with you. So that's what you're going to hear on today's episode. If you want to be on the waiting list for the event in 2017, you can go over to freedomfastlanelive.com, enter your best email address, and you will be on the notification list for when we release the speakers. Until then, enjoy this clip from Freedom Fastlane Live. Peter, I want to tell you a little bit about why we thought of you when we wanted you to keynote Dissonance. Is because I believe and we believe that capitalism is the solution to the world's problems. And I'm of the opinion that we can't afford to wait for governments or other people to do something about it, that we have to do something about it. And I was just hoping you could comment with...
Can you just bring that up a little bit forward? Thank you.
With all of the change that's happening at faster than ever rates, obviously you're of the opinion that the world is getting better and not worse, but some people disagree with that. And I was hoping you could just comment on those who think that. Is it because we just hear more bad news than good news? Or do they have a point?
Yeah, so listen, it's never black and white, but it depends how you define good and bad, right? Are we changing the way we interact with our kids? Are we getting concerns about job loss? All these things are true. But I think we're heading towards a world, the world today is extraordinarily orders of magnitude better than 100 years ago or 500 years ago. You know, people forget, we romanticize the past, right? We think about how, the good old days when we'd grow our own food and nature was all around us. Man, most of the world is still unpopulated. Right? Fly through over an airplane over the United States, and there's plenty of unpopulated places. You can go move there in a heartbeat if you want. And back 100, 200 years ago, I mean, the average age for men in the room here, most of us would have been dead. And we forget how brutish and hard and short life was. So, and yes, we've got challenges, and we'll talk about them, I'm sure. But one of the things that I'm excited about, I'm committed to, is helping 1 million entrepreneurs create companies, right? And supporting them, because I'm not optimistic that the government's going to solve anything or that big companies are going to solve anything. I'm clear that entrepreneurs are going to be billionfold over anybody else solving the problems, because a great problem is a great business opportunity. And so the more entrepreneurs solving problems, the more problems being solved.
What do you think is the role or the responsibility of entrepreneurs? And do you think that there is a moral responsibility for them to attack problems, or do you think that things just naturally get better as the result of people pursuing something better?
So I think that there is, so it's an important question, right? I think in general, entrepreneurs can create a lot of shit too. A lot of schlock, a lot of, useless, yet another photo sharing app. With all due respect, anybody in the audience doing photo sharing apps. But so, for example, again, I coach we start about 60 startups out of Singularity University every year in the graduate program and in our accelerators. And I just launched something called Abundance 360 Digital, right? The annual event that I do, which is my 300 person mastermind, is sort of closed and locked. It's people renew a year in advance for it. But I just created a version called A360 Digital where we're just rolling it out in January. And my mission with A360D is to help entrepreneurs really understand the power of the moonshots and the technologies. And it's coaching towards actually working on problems that are significant and driven by their passion and their purpose. A lot of people get into business just to make money. And that's a very shallow element there. In other words, whenever I've done that, it's been a dismal failure because doing anything in the world is hard. And if you're not driven by your passion, your purpose, you're going to give up, right? A lot of my companies have been overnight successes after a decade of hard work. So I think my advice to people in the audience is if you're doing something because you inherited a company, or you're doing something because you got dragged into it, or you're doing something because it's easy money, please do yourself the joy and the purpose of really connecting what your passion and purpose is. What is your massively transformative purpose, right? In this world where you have access to more knowledge and information and tech than the presidents of the United States had for all of human history, what do you want to do with that power and purpose? Because you can create great wealth. And a lot of the people I work with are people who have made huge amounts of wealth and they're empty. And now they're trying to figure out, what do they do with it? What legacy do I leave? How do I change the world now with it? And so that's the two areas I spend a lot of time, is working with a lot of wealthy individuals on big moonshots through X Prize or through these companies, or entrepreneurs, helping them in that regard.
Yeah, do you think it's possible, or have you seen entrepreneurs make that pivot successfully? Because it can be a golden handcuff situation, whether it is just a fear of loss or desire for security or just predictability.
It's tough.
Have you seen that pivot happen successfully?
So, I mean, I've done it a number of times myself. In my last book, Bold, I talk about how to, in fact, do that. But it's becoming clear first and obsessive about what you care about in the world. And then finding others who have similar interests. It's really hard to do a lot of these things on your own. And a lot of innovation and creation occurs in conversation with people. So creating, for my communities, my A360 community and so forth, it's about mindset and community. Like having the mindset is really important. Your guys are all here for those two things, for mindset and for community, right? It's like making sure, how do you maintain that mindset? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I'm very lucky that I spend a ton of time at Singularity University, at X Prize, at HLI, at PRI, and in this mindset and community where anything is possible, right? So it's encouraging me to go bigger, and that community and that mindset enables you to be empowered to not give up. Because I know a lot of my success is by doggedly not giving up.
They say you shouldn't talk about religion and politics, so I'll only ask you about one. And I would like
Greek
to
Orthodox, no.
I'd like to hear you talk about what you think the role of government is. We asked John Mackey this yesterday. He had his opinion. I'd like to hear yours.
So it's interesting, right? The role of government is going to massively change. So I would have said one thing for the role of government 100 years ago, but it's very different going forward. right? Because I think that the best education in the world is going to be free, delivered by AI, right? The best healthcare in the world is going to be effectively free, delivered by AI and robots. To the point where if you see a surgeon coming at you someday, you're going to say, oh, no, I do not want that human touching me, please. I want the robot. I want the robot that's done it 1,000,000 times perfectly, and it will be true. And so what then does the government do? The role of the government maybe not get in the way. I'm very much a libertarian in that regard. I think so. It's interesting. AJ, that's a good blog we should write on the new role of the government, because defense is one thing, right? Defending the country against enemies, but the best defense actually is being so interconnected that if an enemy attacks you, it's hurting themselves. Right? So you're a collection of 10 trillion human cells.
Wow.
Right? Each of your cells is an individual life form. You don't stab your arm because that arm is part of you. So one of the things I talk about is we're heading towards a meta-intelligence, a world in which 8 billion people are very intimately connected. We didn't talk about BrainComputer Interface, but we're heading that direction. And so if I'm intimately connected with every other person on the planet, it's much harder for me to want to do damage to somebody.
The question came up about mass automation, and will that destroy opportunity? Will that create opportunity? I believe, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I've heard you bring up the universal basic income as a possible solution.
Anybody get my blog here in the audience? Anybody? A few people. So today's blog is on universal basic income. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Right? So there have been a number of experiments done. And the basic concept is that, first of all, we're worried about robots and AIs taking our job for a number of reasons. One, we might love our job, but 70% of Americans hate their job, by the way, just to be clear. And they don't, stock boxes or clean toilets because that's what they love to do. And we are going to demonetize the cost of living, right? When your healthcare and your education is effectively free, delivered much better than ever before by an AI, that cost goes to zero. An autonomous car, I said, is 5 to 10 times cheaper than owning a car. If you've got VR and AR and autonomous cars, you don't have to live in downtown Austin where it's more expensive. You can live an hour away and eat popcorn and watch movies on the way to work. So where you live can be cheaper. So we're going to demonetize the cost of living substantially. And the concept of universal basic income is a function of basically the idea where every single person gets a guaranteed stipend to live on. And the experiments that have done so far point to the fact that when you do that, people actually use that money to improve themselves. They don't become lazier.
That gives me the heebie-jeebies, the idea of just guaranteeing that.
So I'm a libertarian capitalist, and the idea of socialism is something that. But if you look at the Star Trek universe, what Gene Roddenberry actually projected is we are the end point, the boundary condition of where we're going is a post-capitalist world. When I have a nanobot that can take and rearrange the atoms in the soil and produce me a Ferrari for the cost of the raw material in the information set, or produce me anything or an equivalent thereof, the cost of most everything drops to near zero. So there is that version of the future where we've got plenty of energy, 8,000 times more from the sun, lots of materials, especially if we go beyond the Earth to near-Earth asteroids. And so the question is, so there's a lot of change coming.
Doesn't that assume, though, that, the way I see it is if we're all living in a digital world or everything is virtual, that puts a premium on in-person experiences, which will just allow the market to adjust and therefore not just allow people to shift into other markets where there's demand for that.
Sure. I mean, there will always be premium. I mean, in the past, for example, if you wanted, you didn't have to use your digital phone. You could wait till someone got home and use your landline if you want. And then the technology provided more and more capabilities. So there will be tiers of capability. I think of us going from a world of have and have-nots to a world of haves where everybody has the basics, and then super haves.
There are those who fear overpopulation as a big problem.
Yeah.
And
Don't.
and you see that as pretty much the greatest driver of even more abundance. Would you comment on that?
So, first of all, as I mentioned in my slides, the numbers are very clear. And Bill Gates has a great TED talk on this. Two things reduce population growth rate pressures: health and education. You make a populace healthier and better educated, population growth rates plummet. I was in Morocco a few years ago. 30 years ago, 6.8 children per family, down to 2.8 today, a result of two things: healthier, higher education rates in the country. A lot of the healthiest, highest educated countries in the world are in negative growth rates. And so we're heading towards high literacy, high education, high health globally.
You work with a lot of the biggest names in entrepreneurship: Joe Polish, Dan Sullivan. So you work with entrepreneurs.
Usually it's Larry Page and Elon Musk. We can use Joe in.
Yeah. My heroes.
Yes.
So you work with a lot of entrepreneurs in our industry, and I'm curious what you're seeing the trend being in that community, because there's the tech world, which most of us in this room aren't all that connected to. You know, we're building our own businesses, and some of us want to solve great challenges. But outside of the Silicon Valley kind of tech story we hear, I'm curious what you see changing in the world of entrepreneurship right now.
So I think that's again important. One of my, I think about one of my missions, how I want to impact the world. I think about, traditionally for me, it's been opening up space, extending the healthy lifespan, and creating this engine for solving grand challenges. But the last one, solving grand challenges, my mechanism for doing that is through entrepreneurship, right? It's incentivizing entrepreneurs to build companies to solve the world's biggest problems, whether it's the tricorder or a global learning platform, whatever the case might be. And so personally, I'm trying to work with and build and support 1 million entrepreneurs and empower them with these exponential technologies. And each of you should be thinking about these technologies, either if not for yourself, for your kids, because the empowering technologies are going to change all the game. And I just think it is the biggest trend is going to be being able to know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want, right? That notion of whether you're an internet marketer, just the tools that Facebook and Google give you today to understand who's been to your site, where they are, and stalk them and email them and market to them are insanely crazy in terms of their marketer's dream. But we're just beginning, right? One of the companies, I was just in China for 2 weeks. I was visiting one company that Kai-Fu Lee, who ran Google China and Google Apple. He's one of the top entrepreneurs. He's an investor in 2 of my companies. Kai-Fu introduced me to a company called Face++ that is able to do vision recognition, facial vision recognition from photos, right? So being able to know, being able to upload the photos of your members and have, in a few years from now, first of all, your augmented reality glasses will tell you everybody's name and birth dates, and you'll never have to memorize a name again, just like you don't memorize phone numbers anymore. But you're going to walk into a store in the near future. I'm looking at a retail store concept right now, in which you walk in, and if you give permission, you're recognized the moment you come in, and everything about you, everything you ever purchased, is up there. So when the tech comes to help you, they know exactly what you own, what software, and it's just making your time. If I think about what is the most precious thing we have, it's time. It's not money. It's not resources. It's time. And so I have a private plane so I can save an hour at LAX, right? Not seeing the negative news on CNN every night saves you an hour a day to go play with your kids or start work on your startup, whatever the case might be. So we're all born with the same basic thing of 24 hours a day, 365 days in a year, and that endpoint of 80, 90, 100 years will be lengthening. So how do we make more effective use of that time? So how you make use of your time is really important. How you make use of your customers' time is really important.
John Mackey said something really encouraging yesterday. He made note of the fact that we are all going to die.
Not necessarily true.
And you don't and you don't subscribe to that theory. So I was hoping we could talk about human longevity and what you're doing out there and how I can live to be 200 years old.
Yeah, so sure. So basically, when I was in medical school, I remember watching this TV series on sea life, and it shared that certain species of whales lived hundreds of years, sea turtles even longer, potentially a 700-year lifespan. And I remember thinking, well, why the hell do they get to live so long? And why can't I? And I made my decision there that it was a hardware and software problem. And I think it is. And so I think we are now embarking on this next decade as a time where I think this next 10 years is the equivalent of the 90s for internet in healthcare, right? With huge, massive wealth creation, but important, the tools are going to explode. So for genome sequencing, and the other, so HLI I shared with you is a company focused on genomics and data science. It's the largest genome sequencing facility on the planet, and more genome sequence than anybody else by a significant margin. And we're learning from that. Like, what does it mean? And at the end of the day, I should be based on your genome to tell you exactly what you should be eating, what kind of exercise you should be doing, what you're likely to die from, and how to hopefully prevent it. What was it called? Human Longevity Inc., HLI. It's the program is it's just to be clear, it's not cheap. It will be eventually. We'll dematerialize it and demonetize it, but today it's $25,000 and a day at HLI. If it's of interest to anybody, my email. If you email me at peter@humanlongevity.com, I can introduce you to our VIP onboarding team. The other company we're starting is a company called Cellularity, which is the stem cell side of the equation. And I think stem cells, so we're doing a roll-up of all the top stem cell companies that we've seen. And stem cells are the means by which we're really going to, HLI is about stopping you from dying from something, okay, which is valuable. And Cellularity is about adding 30 to 40 healthy years on your life. Because stem cells are the regenerative engine of your body. Anybody who's pregnant or knows someone who is about to become pregnant, please tell them they should be banking their kids' stem cells. In particular, they should be banking their kids' placentas. The placenta is the organ that creates the child. And out of that placenta comes all of the different cell types and so forth that is a human body, our 10 trillion cells. And so there's at least our company it's called Life Bank. We've banked about 80,000 placentas. From those placentas, your child will be able to regrow its heart, liver, lung, kidneys. It's going to be about extending their lifespan. There's variants for us too, but just whether you ever do anything with me, I'm getting that word out there. I hate parents who I just had a kid that you didn't bank it. Oh, there'll be solutions as well, but I think it's important to do.
I feel a lot better about that monthly payment I make for those cord blood stem cells.
Right.
So I want to go into that a little bit more. I'm curious from a health perspective, what breakthroughs are you seeing happen there? And from your opinion, what do you think that, is there, how do I ask this question? Are there any breakthroughs right now that you'd feel comfortable talking about that you think individuals should be doing in their lifestyles in order to prolong lifespans, at least until, we have the technologies to survive everything?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of work going on, right? I'm seeing a huge amount of tech billionaire wealth going into extending the human lifespan. Billions and billions being invested. And I would say, I mean, obviously right now, the most important things are still the fundamental basics: sleeping, eating, exercising. I mean, nothing's changed in that regards. There's a lot of the work on stem cells is just beginning to roll out. I just went for some stem cell treatments 2 weeks ago. None of the stuff is allowed in the U.S. Still, it's overseas. Because the FDA is going to be super hyper cautious. But one of the facilities I just went down to in Panama has treated 7,000 people, a number of the top billionaires I know. So anyway, there's a lot of interesting things going on. Ray Kurzweil has written a couple of good books on how to live long enough to live forever. I'm on mitochondrial supplements. I'm on, I guess I probably shouldn't be talking about it too publicly, but that's another blog topic. That
just makes me want to ask you about it more.
Yeah.
So.
Do you have time for a few questions from the
Yeah,
audience?
I want to ask you one more.
Nothing personal. I
I want to ask you. I mean, it seems like whenever there's a problem, Peter Diamandis wants to do something about it. And so as a result, you're involved in a whole bunch of projects. But from the outside, it looks like you spend most of your time spreading a message. And I'm curious how the heck you get so much done without appearing stressed out and by spreading a message, because I think running one company is stressful enough. So how the heck do you get so much done?
So that's a good question. I guess I'm clear about what I love doing and what I'm good at. And I'm engaged right now in typically an executive chairman role versus a CEO role. So I've got a great CEO for Planetary Resources and for Human Longevity and for Singularity University. Just hired a CEO for X Prize. I started a venture fund that I closed in September and have a great guy running that for me. So every company needs a CEO who is living and breathing that company. And that isn't me. I know what I do love. I love seeing the challenge, envisioning the company, the entrepreneurial startup, bringing some founders with me together, capitalizing the company, giving it a vision, and then helping a CEO take it and run it. And then I'm focused on promoting that company, creating partnerships for that company, helping solve problems, because every company's got ups and downs constantly. Shit really hits the fan with me when 5 companies are all going like this. And I'm elated when 5 companies are going like this.
Yeah. How is it that you're finding so many good people that you trust to run those initiatives?
So a lot of these people are people I've known for a long time. And like Chris Lewicki, who's running Planetary Resources, I knew for 20 odd plus years and brought him in, and then he was president first and then made him CEO. But people are still the scarce resource, for sure.
All right, let's take a question over here.
Peter, you talk about how entrepreneurs should be capitalizing on disruptive opportunities. And yet technologies like 3D printing took 33 years to come to the market or be marketable. So how would you advise a new entrepreneur like myself who want to live in this world of opportunity and possibility and solve big problems, but also want to make ends meet next year or better? Yeah.
So that's really, that's great and important. I'm having these exact same conversations with my A360D community. So first of all, you have to be clear about when the right time for you to pull the trigger is on a startup. And you can, in fact, be working a job that you commit your 40 hours a week to, but there's an extra 100 hours beyond that. And if the startup you want to take on is fun, if it's joyous, if it's your highest calling in life, your MTP, then that time spent, what I call shower time, is enjoyment, right? Now, so first of all, don't go and start a company or a product or service just to make money. Please don't. It's following your bliss, and money will come along with it. You need to find something which is your highest calling and purpose in life. And the next thing you need to do, especially if you're not absolutely clear and don't have the reserve set up, is find a partner or two partners to do it with, right? And then there's going to reach a point at which you jump. But it's easier to jump now than ever before, especially with crowdfunding available, right? Where you can actually, if you're clear about the product and service, if you can actually work in nights and evenings to shape it, design it, get it to the point where it looks real and you're sure of what it is, and then actually go out there and run a crowdfunding campaign. And if the crowd actually wants it, you've got the money in the bank to jump at that point. So it's creating sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that regard. So there are mechanisms that reduce your risk in that fashion. That make sense?
Yes.
We'll go over here.
Hey, Peter. Do you have any recommendations on mental frameworks on how to select? I mean, there's so much opportunity, whether it's medicine or food or poverty. I tend to be interested in all of it.
Yeah.
And it's overwhelming to think of what direction to go in. So do you have a framework on how to pick?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do. So I'll share it with you, but if any of you signed up for that download, I'll send you information about my Entrepreneur A360D program, because all this stuff are just the same questions, but with the details behind them. So the most important thing is for you to figure out what you're obviously most passionate about. And the question becomes then is, okay, well, I'm not sure what I'm most passionate about. It's interesting, though, even at SU, right, which is really a hyper-curated group of 5,000 people down to 100 or so, half the graduate students in the audience are not clear what their MTP is, or what their massively transformative purpose is, what their mission purpose in life is. And that blows me away. And it may be true for you here in the audience. And so I say to them, as I say to you, it is your single most important thing is for you to get clarity about that. Because without that clarity, you're not going to have the engine or the energy to really push through and continue when it's hard. And when I'm supporting somebody, I'm attracted to that person's energy and commitment and passion. Not like they're on cocaine, but that, if they really tell that they're they're driven by that purpose in life. It's addictive. People want to be with you. People want to support you when they see that. So how do you connect to that deep energy? And my answer to you is, I have two things. What did you want to do as a child? Right? What was your earliest childhood passions and fantasies that you really wanted to? I don't care how crazy they are. Right? Mine was space. It's driven everything I've done in my life. A good friend of mine, Richard Garriott, who lived here in Austin, is now in New York and Austin. I don't know if you guys know Lord British from the video game world. He wanted video games. His dad was an astronaut, a Skylab and a shuttle astronaut. All his friends were astronauts. And when he wanted to play video games as a kid, it's like he was laughed at, but that was his passion. And he went on to make probably hundreds of millions of dollars in video game design, enough so that he bought a ticket to the space station to become the first second-generation astronaut, right? Never having graduated from college. Mm-hmm. So you can make it. The second thing, besides what did you want to be as a passion as a child, is if I gave you $1 billion and said, go change the world, what would you do with it? Right? I mean, that thought experiment. Mm-hmm. What would you do with that? What's the impact on the planet you want to leave during your lifetime?
Thank you.
All right, we're going to do two more. Here.
Hi, Peter. First of all, love everything you do. You're literally on my wall of heroes, so thank you for being here. Elon Musk, who obviously probably comes up a lot, recently talked about how we could power the entire U.S. using a small corner of Utah, and the entire world using a small section the size of Spain.
True.
Running the rough numbers, I came up with between land and solar panels, that's just over $5 billion in cost. Is there a reason to go with some, obviously more infrastructure on top of that, but with just those two, with that reasonable cost, is there a reason to go that route versus something more decentralized like solar panels on every rooftop?
Well, so here's there are a couple of things. Number one, I would love to believe that cost. I don't, in that I'm sure there is replacement and maintenance and real estate and transmission and oversight and all kinds of things that might increase that an order of magnitude. But even if it was $50 billion, that's relatively a very cheap amount. The second part of that is, besides the solar, you need the batteries. So Elon just opened the Gigafactory, and you probably need about 100 gigafactories to provide the battery backup for nighttime. The other thing besides that is you don't want single-point failures. So one of the most valuable things that we have going on right now is the ability to create distributed infrastructure. Right? The reason the internet is so powerful, it was built by ARPA, then DARPA, to become fail-safe, meaning you could take down any nodes, anything, and the internet would reorganize to be able to pick up any losses. One of the biggest issues is that when you have power plants, those become terrorism sites and so forth. So distributed power is a huge value to be had. So I think about the notion that the world, when it's heading towards distributed information, distributed power, distributed healthcare, distributed education, where it's no centralized, when you've ever had an evil empire or a dictator, the way they would control the city is they would take control of the TV station and the power station and the water supply and so forth. So how do you decentralize all of that so people become more empowered? So, I look at this every time I fly over LA and I look out the vast series of rooftops and I see all of this massive real estate, which is the future of power generation. So that's my quick thinking on it.
Thank you.
All right, you get the final word.
Peter, I was wondering if you could talk about brain-computer interface and the possibility of downloading your consciousness. Is that something you see a fundamental issue with?
So, sure. So there's Ray Kurzweil, who is a dear friend, a co-conspirator. We started some companies together and served on some boards together. He was at my Abundance 360 mastermind last year, where we were focused on, typically I'm focused on 2 to 5 years, but I said, okay, let's take it out. And we talked about some of his most unusual predictions. And so, and he's got, if you look him up on the internet, Kurzweil predictions, he's got a posted like 83% success rate, which is pretty extraordinary. And so his prediction for BCI, when you're able to connect the cortex, the highest portions of your brain, to the internet, is the early to mid 2030s. Right? So that's like 15 years from now. So I want you to imagine, so our brains, our cerebral cortex, and our neocortex, we have about 300 million pattern recognizers. These are units of about 100 neurons in size. And those neurons are where you memorize things, languages, phone numbers, faces, things like that. And when you use them up, you've used them up. And there are techniques that allow you to expand your memory and use other parts of your brain by associating with visual images and such. But we have a limited I/O, input-output capability, through our eyes, our ears, our touch, and a limited amount of memory. And just like, these devices have a limited amount on them as well, but when they want to do something more complex, they upload to the cloud. So the notion is that we are heading towards a world in which we're going to connect our brains to the cloud. And that there's a great trilogy of books, one of my favorite science fiction series, called Nexus, by one of our SU professors, NEXUS. And we're going to be able to, have 1,000 times more memory, or you need someone, Ryan, you're coming at me. I want to say something witty and funny, so I might, bring on 1,000 Google processor cores to, think of something funny to tell you as you're approaching me. There are a number of companies working on that. One of my dear friends and co-investors in HLI and Planetary Resources, Brian Johnson, just committed $100 million of seed money to his company called Kernel, and they're in human trials right now for hippocampal implants. How do you supplement your memory? So there's a lot of, I think the French term is crazy shit coming down the pike. As to uploading my consciousness, I'm never going to feel comfortable with having machines saying, okay, you're uploaded now, you can kill yourself. That's just not going to work.
Peter, when we think of capitalism, we think of solving world problems, and I so appreciate you carrying that torch.
Thank you.
So we admire you and we love what you're up to. So thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you.
Let's get up for Peter Diamandis.
Thank you, guys.
I hope you enjoyed today's clip from Freedom Fastlane Live. In my experience, all of my biggest breakthroughs in both the people I've met and the information I've consumed have come as the result of attending events like Freedom Fastlane Live. And our attendees, even our speakers, would say exactly the same thing. So I'm going to encourage you to head over to freedomfastlanelive.com. Make sure that you are signed up for the notification list for when it goes live. We'll also be teasing out speaker announcements throughout the year as they become official. You're not going to want to miss Freedom Fastlane Live 2017, so make sure you're on the notification list at freedomfastlanelive.com. Hope to see you there. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you share it with someone you think would find value in it, and we'll see you guys on the next show.